Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terror Podcast, Season 10, Episode 16. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, it feels like an eternity since we last talked. There is so much to go into today, but first, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. I was thinking to myself yesterday, man, we could do daily shows and probably still be behind. We're all that has transpired since we last talked, and really not too long after we got off the last podcast.
Yeah, so let's just dive into what happened because, again, there was so much to talk about today. A lot of transactions happening over the last 48 hours. We'll start with the rare in-season trade the Steelers have made. Granted, it is very early in the season, but Josh Dobbs going to Jacksonville for a 2020 fifth-round pick. Obviously, the Jags lose Nick Foles. They needed some help there. And to me, just my instant reaction to that was, wow, this team got a fifth-round pick for Josh Dobbs. I've talked about the studies I've done that said his value is going to be about a conditional seventh. So to get a concrete, not a conditional as far as we're aware of, fifth-round pick is to me a home run for Josh Dobbs.
Absolutely, and I was surprised they got as high as that as well too. But when you get teams that are in a situation where the need is very high, such was the case with the Jaguars with losing, and man, you hate that injury to happen to anybody, but that Nick Foles family has been through a lot.
Right. And it was on a touchdown pass he got hurt.
Absolutely. And for a guy like him, I'm not sure if everybody knows what him and his wife went through with the loss I think of a miscarriage recently and all like that. You just thought, oh Lord, what a good guy to have this happen to and all. But you could tell, at least I thought I could tell, and I thought I heard Nick Foles kind of mouth it too when I was watching that game actually live when it happened there, that it's probably going to be his collarbone or his clavicle or whatnot, and that ended up being the case. And that Minshew kid came in and actually played pretty dang well. Well, they need a backup they needed a backup quarterback, so Dobbs was their choice. And how long those conversations went on with Colbert, who knows? But it makes me feel like they were comfortable kind of right from the end of the preseason on of possibly dealing Dobbs if they got, or if Colbert got what he, deemed good value for.
And this is absolutely good value. There's no debate about that. You take it and run. Dobbs, I've said it before, Dobbs is obviously can be frustrating with the lack of accuracy and inconsistency with his ball placement, but there were so many good traits that he has. And if he can ever find a way to straighten out that accuracy, I know it's so difficult to do. It's probably the hardest trait to try to improve upon, accuracy and ball placement. This guy could be a really good player in the NFL. So you wish him well, and you just saw kind of, from the beat writers and people that knew him and all the community stuff that he did, the impact he had on local hospitals in the Pittsburgh area, how good of a guy Josh Dobbs is and how much people are going to miss him, not only in that locker room, but in the community as well.
Yeah, they did lose a good guy. I mean, this is he's going to be successful with whatever he does moving forward, and maybe hopefully that's football for him as well, too. Look, the writing was on the wall. This offseason, we expected Mason Rudolph to seize that number 2 spot. He did, and Dobbs is in the third of the 4-year rookie deal there, and if he would have lasted the 4 years, he probably wouldn't have stuck around too much longer after that, at least in Pittsburgh there. So. Yeah, and then they had Hodges to kind of fall back on there, and that's the route that they chose. So you can't blame either side really. I mean, the Jaguars needed, like I said, a backup quarterback there. Look, I was a year off on this. I had him going to a cat team a year ago, but no, in all seriousness, he is a guy that you root for, and now we'll see what all transpires with him. And in the meantime, everybody's favorite quarterback is back in Pittsburgh. You didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out who was probably coming back as soon as Dobbs was dealt.
Yep, Devlin Hodges signed on the practice squad. But it's interesting. Steelers only 2 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster now, and you wrote this up this morning, Dave. But it's the first time that's happened since briefly in, what was it, 07? What year was that?
Let's see, 2010
okay,
was actually the last time. Let me pull that up here, and I've had a lot of notes kind of on the side about this, but never had them really kind of organized together. But the fact of the matter is, in 2010, that was when Ben was serving that suspension to start the season, and Dennis Dixon opened up that 2010 regular season as a starting quarterback. Ahead of that game against the second game of the season against the Tennessee Titans, Byron Leftwich was dealing with a sprained MCL at the time, and Batch was the backup to Dixon. And the Steelers needed to get Steve McClendon on their 53-man roster because Casey Hampton was dealing with a hamstring injury that year. So they did the old kind of quick quarterback turnaround there. They let Leftwich go on that Saturday. They promoted Steve McClendon from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. So they went into that week 2 game against the Tennessee Titans with just 2 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster. Now, obviously, the beginning of next week, they brought Leftwich back, and that was if memory serves me, and I think it does, that was the only time that season that happened. Now, I think you have to go all the way back to before 2007 to find the last time that the Steelers entered a game with just 2 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster, and in 2005, the week 1 game, if memory serves me here, Batch was released on that Saturday before the team's week 1 game, curiously enough, also against the Titans, so that linebacker Andre Frazier could be signed off of the practice squad due to, I think it was Clark Higgins and Porter that were dealing with injuries at the time there. So that precipitated that move at that time, and once again, Batch was let go and then re-signed back to the 53-man roster. Now, the year before that, Ben's rookie season, 2004, they actually went quite a few games with 2 quarterbacks on the roster. Obviously, Tommy Maddox opened up that regular season as a starter. The second game was that game against Baltimore, and let's see, how did that went? They needed a roster spot, I think, that game. Because they claimed, was it the first game or second game? No, they opened the regular season when Maddox and Roethlisberger is the only 2 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster, and Brian St. Pierre had made the initial 53, but then they claimed Sean Morey off waivers, and they needed a spot for him, so Pierre was then sent to the practice squad there. So they opened up that regular season with 2 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. They had brought Pierre back for that second game, and that was the game that Maddox hurt his elbow on. And then Ben obviously took over, and then they actually, they win a couple games that season with just Pierre and Ben Roethlisberger as the 2 quarterbacks. And then they got, later in the season there in the week 17, obviously the Steelers had run off all of those wins that season there, and they got into week 17 and was going to rest Ben that week. So they sat Ben down, and they brought Brian St. Pierre back. Obviously, Tommy Maddox was healthy at the time there, at that time. So they had the 3 quarterbacks to end the regular season there, but I think they had gone something like from week 10 until week 17 with just the two quarterbacks. Now, prior to that, and I'm talking prior, meaning all the way back to 2000. Or from 2000 to 2004. I don't remember them ever doing the whole two quarterback thing, because obviously Kevin Colbert's never been a fan of that. I know that was a long explanation, but damn it, I put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, so thank you for that, because I wouldn't have been able to do the legwork for that. Brian St. Pierre, part of the, if memory serves, the 0 for 1 club. One career pass attempt, I believe.
Yeah, I believe you're right. And remember, in one of those years there, Kirk Kittner was actually signed. I think it was now this was right towards the end of the preseason. He wasn't kept. Trying to think, it was the season, I think that was the 2004 season, when Batch had gone to IR. Because remember, Roethlisberger was slated to be the number 3 quarterback. Batch had the knee injury in that August or something and went to IR. They needed another quarterback to close out the preseason. They brought in Kirk Kittner. I don't even think he threw a pass in the preseason there. But he was released there, and then one of those spans there, they had Mike Quinn on the practice squad there as the third quarterback.
He had some deep cuts today, Dave.
Yeah, and that was the year I think that Maddox. I think that was also 2004 that they had Quinn on the practice squad, if memory serves me there. Now here's the thing. I think we both agree they're going to go into the game this weekend against Seattle with two quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, they're probably going to go, as far as I'm aware, unless injury changes, the rest of the season with only two quarterbacks.
One would think, barring injuries, you wouldn't think that that Devlin Hodges is at any sort of risk of getting snatched off the practice squad right now. So, we could, for a considerable time, see this team carry just two quarterbacks on their 53. Now, the question begs to be asked now: are we seeing a change, a sign of the times here, moving forward? Could this become, because look, they did away with the number 3 emergency quarterback rule years ago. And for those people that don't remember, you could have 8 inactives on your inactive list at one time, and one of those be a emergency quarterback that actually dressed for a game. Now obviously both of your quarterbacks would have had to been down for that third quarterback to enter the game, and once that third quarterback did enter the game, none of the other two could return, no matter how okay they were at the time. Now that rule's obviously been done away with for quite a while now, and what that really means now is if for teams that do carry 3 quarterbacks, 98 times out of probably 100, all that third quarterback's on the inactive list. So. And in today's inactive list, if you're on it, you don't play. There is that no emergency quarterback rule. So, are we seeing a sign of the times, or is it just one of those? Well, it's circumstance related, and it's who that we have on our number 3 that is causing us to take this course of action.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a matter of circumstance. If they didn't get such a good deal for Dobbs, Dobbs would still be here. Obviously, the intent was to keep 3 quarterbacks on the 53 when you constructed this roster initially. But, it is just history keeping 3, and history, is always subject to change. So maybe it is a changing of the guard. Depends how they address the position in the offseason. But just for what matters the rest of the season, I expect them to have only Ben and Rudolph on the 53.
Yeah, I do as well. You just wonder what, does this, will this come up in the future 53-man roster predictions, Yeah,
just uncharted territory.
For sure. So quite interesting there. And, look, congrats to Devlin Hodges. He did enough to get himself back on an NFL roster practice squad, but it still matters.
Yeah, like I said, I thought he had the talent to be on the practice squad. Obviously, I stuck my neck out to just assume they were going to keep 4 quarterbacks, including Hodges, on the practice squad, but I'm glad he circled back, and maybe you see him in camp next year. Other move that happened, another notable one that has Steelers Nation pretty upset right now, right before the game. We talked about Tuzar. Well, we talked about him getting released and then bringing up Johnny Holton, but then I think after we did our show Monday, Tuzar Skipper was claimed on waivers by the New York Giants. So the team tried to get him to the practice squad, I assume, but that did not happen. He's a New York Giant right now, and a lot of Steeler fans upset about that. Dave, how upset are you about Tuzar Skipper no longer being a Pittsburgh Steeler?
I mean, I hated to see him go. You know,
same.
Definitely hated. You know me. I come from the school of I'd like the Steelers to draft 5 to 6 edge rushers every year. Because I never think you can have enough good edge rushers, and obviously Tuzar Skipper did a fine job during the preseason as an edge rusher. And you know, there was the thought in the back of not only my head, but I'm sure most people listening to this podcast saying, "Oh wow, how great would it be if him and a guy like a Daney, come through as you know, as far as future years go. Maybe this can save a future early round draft pick, so to speak, when it comes to an edge rusher." So yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed he didn't. Wasn't able to circle back, but it's not the end of the world. And hey, let's wait and see how this before people start burning anything, which seems to be the instant reaction no matter what happens in the NFL here. Let's see how things pan out. I mean, the likelihood of, I'm not saying it won't happen, but the likelihood of a guy like Skipper lasting all season on the Giants' 53-man roster is kind of slim.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it's gonna go, but yeah, he could come back. They could cut him, or something could happen. I mean, it's a little frustrating because I like Skipper. Obviously, he's a great story and had an amazing preseason. You saw some traits that could suggest he could play down the road. But I know for this year, Skipper wasn't helping your team at all. Like, he wasn't gonna play. So you're not going to miss him for this year. Of course, you can talk about offseason, potentially replacing Dupree this winter. I mean, I get all that, but let's not delude ourselves and suggest that Skipper was going to have any sort of meaningful impact on the roster this season.
And that's where I think most people listening and reading just don't get that it was going to take a unique circumstance for Skipper to see any playing time.
Mm-hmm. With the bigger frustration, I don't want to diverge from this too much, but the fact that Ola Adeniyi didn't play a snap on defense on Sunday night. I mean, you're in a blowout loss. Chick played. Watt's hurt. How does Adeniyi not even get any snaps? If he can't get snaps as the guy that's up, how did you ever expect Skipper to be able to get any sort of playing time on this team? So that was frustrating for me. Is why not get a look at a young guy like Adeniyi who needs some reps instead of putting out a veteran in Chick where you know what you have in him.
Yeah, and we still don't know how. I mean, maybe Adeniyi still needs a little bit of practice. Still, he was down all that time.
Yeah, he practiced last week
with the coming off the meniscus and all like that. I mean, we don't know what he missed either. So I mean, but he did dress. So if you dress, you would think you're able to play in the game, and obviously he didn't. We'll have to start seeing moving forward here. If he does start getting some snaps, Well,
I doubt it. If he's not getting snaps in that scenario, I mean, unless it's a severe injury, it's hard to see him actually getting work. If you can't get snaps when you're down 33-3, I don't know when you're going to give that guy snaps.
Well, there was a lot of people that I thought maybe should have been out of that game.
Yeah.
the other night there when it got down, that late. I mean, and Adeniyi did, however, play 13.
Play like 9. Yeah.
13 special team snaps, so at least he's getting the burn there.
Mm-hmm. But I want to get some. I mean, I thought it was a decent time to have a chance to evaluate, in kind of a lower pressure situation. But I mean, the point I'm just trying to make is that if Adeniyi can't get snaps, and Skipper certainly wasn't getting snaps, and I think Matthew Marksy wrote about this yesterday. Not the first time this has happened. It's happened with some higher profile names before: Wesley Johnson, Josh Morrow. Two guys are still in the league actually, but we've been down this road before, and I don't think people are particularly missing guys like Johnson and Morrow. So, maybe by this time next year, Skipper is just kind of a guy that, he was pretty good for a little amount of time in Pittsburgh. Not a guy you worry about too much.
And that's why I caution the burning of the jerseys and all just yet. I mean, let's let a little bit of time pass here to see how, Skipper, obviously, look, I root for him. I root for anybody, especially edge rushers. And once again, I mean, he had a great he showed a lot of great things during the preseason there when it came to counters and having a pass rush plan and everything that you kind of look for in an outside linebacker for the Steelers there. So I mean, once again, like I said, I was disappointed not to see him circle back. I'm sure the Steelers, that was part of the risk involved. And I know people are judging this thing. Oh wow, you call him up just to have a guy like Johnny Holton play 6 or whatever offensive snaps and that's it, But I mean, look, there's a rhyme and a reason to the way people say, well, why not cut Matakevich? Why not cut Chicolo? You knew that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, that was nonsense.
I mean, who else were you going to potentially cut? I mean,
yeah, there weren't a lot of good options unless you were going to cut Gilbert III or Fred Johnson. Right.
So we'll see. Never say never, right? I mean, look, this isn't one of those circumstances where he decided to leave. He had no choice being claimed off waivers. So who knows if he gets waived at some point? Maybe at some point this season by the Giants. Maybe somehow he finds his way back.
Well, you signed him to a futures contract after the season. It's always possible.
Sure.
We'll see what happens. But yeah, kind of does suck a little bit. I can sympathize with Steelers Nation for that because Skipper looked like a good player. All right, Dave, let's move into what happened yesterday. But before we do that, talking Tomlin injury report, I do want to note, I know normally on Wednesday we have a beat writer. This week, Seattle. We'll have that for Friday. At least that's our goal. Just time issues with them being West Coast, myself being East Coast. It's probably going to push that interview back to Friday, but just a heads up there, we do still plan on having a beat writer to talk about Seattle for Friday's show. Let's get into what Tomlin said on Tuesday. We'll start with the injury report and one new name that wasn't covered. We didn't know he was injured until Tomlin mentioned it yesterday, and it seems, fairly serious. Roosevelt Nix with a knee injury. Tomlin didn't, completely rule out the possibility of Nix playing on Sunday against Seattle, but it looks very likely that Nix is going to miss, and Tomlin said could miss another game or two. So you're missing a key call on special teams for potentially a few games.
Yeah, and you look back over the special team snaps that he played, and he played a.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I went back and looked. He played every snap he was supposed to play. So he got injured during the game and just didn't come out until after the game.
Right, and that's what I was getting at. It's not like you can pinpoint, well, he only played 7.
I think I found where he got hurt on a kick. I think he was covering a kick, and I think he stepped wrong trying to jump over somebody. I think that's where he got hurt, but it's hard to tell.
And he obviously didn't have any offensive snaps, but that might have been by design. Mike Tomlin would only say he was injured in game. He wouldn't, someone didn't kind of ask the question correctly. If I was in that room, I think I would have asked, was Nix going to, part of the game plan at all, up until he got in, you know what I'm saying, trying to phrase it around that aspect. We're still kind of left in the dark knowing, if he's healthy enough to run down kicks and all, you would think he'd be able to get in there to run some power plays,
Yeah, I think Nix got hurt at 10-17 in the third quarter, right after the Boswell field goal, the only points of the day.
If that's the case, and he was healthy during those short yardage spells,
that's what I'm getting at.
In the second quarter,
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So you kind of see him. He kind of steps awkwardly trying to avoid a block, and I think it's the right knee, it looks like. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, the point is I think that he was healthy for the first half stuff. But yeah, key call at special teams. If they want to use a fullback, they'll probably use a tight end or someone like that. Other injuries, Dave? Tomlin.
Did you buy anything into maybe Tyler Matakevich?
We have actually a question about that for the reader email section. Someone sent me that I was going to pass it along to you. Short answer is probably not, but we can talk about that a little bit later in the show. With the other injuries, Dave, you can go run through it because I don't have the list up right now. Tomlin seemed pretty optimistic on everything. I know there was a report that Joe Hayden, AC joint in that shoulder, a sprain joint in his shoulder, that Tomlin seems like he's going to play, and ditto with Watt and Juju and Pouncey, but those guys might be limited early in the week is kind of the way Tomlin phrased it.
And it's kind of dangerous to read much into how Tomlin phrases things and especially when it comes to injuries here. But the initial reports, and most of these started to trickle out even before Tomlin's press conference. T.J. Watt hip, Joe Hayden, as you mentioned, with his shoulder. There was the report that that was an AC sprain. Ahead of that, Juju Juju Smith-Schuster with the toe. There was a report that he had went to X-rays after the game, and that checked out fine. He supposedly thinks he's going to be fine. And then Marquise Pouncey with the ankle. There was a report that he was, from teammates that people expect him to play, and he was upbeat concerning the ankle injury that he had suffered during the Sunday night game against the Patriots there. Mike Tomlin says, let's see, as I stand here, whether it's Pouncey or Juju or others that we talked about briefly in some form or fashion after the game, they may be limited at some portions of the week or the early portions of the week, but I think we're all optimistic about their availability. This week will tell the story as we work. He was later asked about Sean Davis, who missed the game with that ankle injury. And Mike Tomlin said he's in the same boat as Watt, Hayden, Smith-Schuster, and Pouncey. And then he went on to talk a little bit about the Roosevelt Nix injury. Rosie Nix is one that's probably a little bit different, worth mentioning, Tomlin said. He has a knee injury that's being evaluated. He may miss this game and another or two. I'll have more information as we get it regarding him, but he is one, and I don't think I specifically mentioned him after the game. That may be a little different than some of the others. One of these is not like the other.
Oh, that's a happy tone.
One of these does not belong.
Well,
is that before your time? That was like Sesame Street, right? Or
yeah, I get it. I get it enough. Well, apparently that's the team's philosophy for a fullback in this offense. That does not belong with this team. But yeah, that's obviously a big blow for special teams and any potential use at fullback. Sean Davis. Did you mention Sean Davis? That he's kind of in that.
Yeah,
we'll
same
see
boat.
What happens. Same boat. Yeah. But I like his odds of being able to come back, at least kind of where we sit here today. What else from the Tomlin presser? I thought it was interesting that he noted the guy that wore the green dot, that was the signal caller. He thought what inside linebacker was it going to be traditionally a role held by an inside linebacker, but no, in Pittsburgh this week, and I get it, I'm fine with it. For the record, TJ Watt, it's a man with the green dot this week against the Patriots.
Yeah, that was a little bit surprising.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that I think they had covered it in the early portion of the broadcast the other night, but yeah. And do you have the quote up specifically about what Mike Tomlin said about that?
I can get it here in a second. But yeah, I mean, I understand because there was so much of a rotation at inside linebacker. Nolan was an every down player Sunday. Watt was, the guy and was playing more often. So I understand that. Tomlin said, quote, TJ Watt carried the dot in the last game because he was probably the most indispensable second-level defender, a guy that's positioned within the group to communicate with those in front and those behind. And that was the long and short of what Tomlin said about that.
Yeah, let's see. There was Mike Tomlin says, whose hand? Let's see. There's always communication problems early in the year. I don't, can we get to a portion of the year? I mean, can we get those to lessen a little bit maybe in future years here, Mike? I don't want to make more out of it than what it is. Carried the dot last game, probably the most indispensable, and I think that's what you covered right there, front behind. Obviously, with the way that we were rotating our inside linebacker situationally, those guys are moving in and out of the game. There would be more fluidity if we had the dot on Watt, and that's why we did it. We'll make those decisions week to week as we define our roles and as we gain traction in that regard. He's a capable guy, good communicator and leader. Non-issue there in terms of what he's capable of doing. And then the follow-up question: any reason why Watt historically has been an inside guy as opposed to an outside guy? You said you're shuffling your inside guys. Mike Tomlin said there's no global guidelines. It's just better to be somebody that's on the field almost all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's fine by me. What I think is more interesting, and this is thanks to the charting that we do, is before Watt's hip injury, he missed 2 snaps. He was subbed out for 2 snaps prior to that injury Sunday night. Both of those plays resulted in touchdowns. The Josh Gordon touchdown, which was a clear communication bust, and then the first touchdown by Philip Dorsett, the 25-yard down the right seam. So this team, while Watt is the guy, they clearly are struggling when he's not on the field and being that signal caller.
And we'll never know if that played a big part in the communication problems and the bust.
I imagine it did, at least on the Gordon play. I imagine it's got to have some level of effect.
Why not get those college signs out there, Alex, that have the silly photos on it?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I wouldn't do that in New England. I don't know. Again, take some photos.
Well, maybe you have 4 sets of them, but then you're just going to confuse everybody. You're going to have more bad communication. But look, I mean, how many years now running are we talking about? Miscommunication. It's almost become like it's an accepted thing. Oh well,
Hmm.
okay, it was just miscommunication.
Yeah, and you're right, it shouldn't be. But when you have constantly new talent coming in and guys that haven't played together a lot, Devin Bush, Cam Kelly, I think when Tomlin talked about having new guys at central communicating, spots, I think that's what he's referring to. I'm not excusing it, but I'm just saying that's why it happens with when you keep adding new parts to the defense, trying to add new talent. The one trade-off to that, at least early in the year, is potential communication issues.
And on that first touchdown to Gordon too, I don't know if you watched Bill Belichick do his breakdowns and all. Which, by the way, I know it makes people sick to kind of watch that stuff, but he they do a great job. I wish Tomlin would do some sort of a segment like that, to break down some of these things. But on that, Belichick went out of his way even to kind of say, look, this just that first touchdown had come on the very next play after that double pass, and he says we did a good job of getting to the line quickly, and and then causing a little bit of confusion there, and I think there's a report out there that Steven Nelson wasn't supposed to blitz on that play. Don't know for sure, obviously, but when he did blitz, nobody had Gordon kind of on that hot underneath crosser release there, and he two missed tackles later, and he's in the end zone there. So, little things like that, the Patriots do a good job of once, they just big played you. They have you reeling from that, and probably guys pointing, yelling at each other that way, and then you get up to the line, you run another play, and then you score a touchdown on it.
Yeah, I know Mike Hilton even talked about tempo and how the Steelers defense didn't handle the Patriots tempo well, which, you knew was coming. I mean, they're in their place. That's what they do. It's what they've always done, and they have great continuity. And so you knew they were going to go tempo, and the Steelers did not handle that well. I don't know for sure what happened on that Gordon touchdown. I haven't done the deep dive into it, but you can look from the end zone angle of that play on the all-22. Nelson's communicating something with Cameron Kelly, basically, I think, trying to say, hey, dude, I'm blitzing on this play. You're covering me, right? And I'm saying that very informally, but that's kind of the cue that seems to be given. And then Kelly never seems to acknowledge or doesn't pick that up. So I'm not entirely sure who that's on, but Nelson was trying to communicate, and Kelly seemed like he wasn't really didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, you have a guy in there in his first NFL game.
On the road against Tom Brady.
Right.
Good luck.
That's not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. So. Look, maybe they can get Sean Davis back in there and, hopefully straighten some of this thing out in the secondary. But make no mistake about it, the secondary really as a whole didn't have a great game, period.
No,
and that's not. That's a Captain Obvious statement, but the all-22 really confirms it even more.
And the number of coverage busts was insane. I mean, you have that play, you have the Dorsett 58-yard touchdown, even ones like. I think you posted a clip of the one play action to Edelman on that over route for like 24 yards. That was a communication bust where Kelly's got to rotate down and rob that, and he doesn't. So, I mean, there's just not even just the big touchdown plays, but some of the other chunk plays. They were communication issues too. So it was, I mean, I got a clip on, I don't know if you have my Twitter timeline pulled up here. I don't know if you saw this while watching all 22. Mike Hilton covering Steven Nelson on one play in the end zone. That's kind of the state of where this thing is at.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you get a team when you play a team like the Patriots, who are just looking to set you up throughout the game, and to make in-game adjustments as they go. Nobody does it better than Brady and McDaniels, right?
Yeah, and again, when you have Brady, when you have the same kind of continuity, generally speaking. Yeah, you're always in the position to add those wrinkles and change tempo and kind of do whatever you want, and that's what the Patriots did Sunday night.
Absolutely. And now here what else did before we get into it? What else do we want to go over that Mike Tomlin had to say?
I didn't have a whole lot. I don't think he said a ton of information and not stuff that we didn't know. I thought the Watt thing was the most interesting comment that he made. I'm trying to scroll through all the things we wrote about yesterday. I thought it was interesting that he seemed to really not be bothered by the snap count of James Washington. And you can probably speak to this better than I can because you wrote the article on it. But it felt like, at least in the early portions, that Washington wasn't logging a lot of snaps, and that was a weird one.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you had to place bets, even though I don't think it was a huge, and this is, I think, the kind of way I started off that post as well, too, there. I don't think people had their jaws dropped by the fact that Holton was promoted, from the 53. I mean, from the practice squad to the 53. Obviously, for special teams needs and all like that. Now, obviously, when you got into the in the inactives, and I think we hit on this the other day, to have all six, I would have been on the betting side that a guy like Deontay Johnson would have been inactive for that game. Obviously, they chose Zach Gentry to kind of be that that odd man out in that situation there. But even so, with Holton on, being pulled up to the 53 for this game, and with all the other receivers being active for that game, I would have bet you big money that the first deep ball wouldn't have gone to Johnny Holton, and that it would have gone to a guy like James Washington instead. Not that it's a huge deal, but and obviously we'd probably be a little bit results biased there had they connected on that. Down the right side, that ball was obviously a little bit underthrown there. I think when you go through this thing, though, and I kind of went quickly play by play through all 22 just to kind of, we don't have the offensive charting back from Matthew yet, but to get a good idea as to kind of how that first kind of quarter and a half went, with the rotation, and then you look at the final kind of snap numbers. You look at those numbers, and it's still, Washington ended the night having played 35 of the 67 total for the game. Now, if I would have if you had not watched the game, like our buddy Bob.
No, be nice to Bob. Poor Bob.
I was itching to find a time to hit that in there. But had you not watched the game, and I told you that Washington played 35 of 67 total snaps, would it have set off any kind of alarms in your head?
It would it lower than what I thought it would have been. A little lower.
By about what, 6 or 7?
Yeah, maybe about 10 snaps.
So that's what he played. And here's the meat of that article here. The Steelers used 11 personnel, which is obviously 3 wide receivers, on 44 plays Sunday night against the Patriots. Washington was in on just 17 of those. So that's one little red flag there. Ryan Switzer, however, was in on 29 of those 44 plays. Now, remember, we're talking about 3 wide receiver groupings here, 7 of which Washington was in for. The 6 plays that Holton was on the field for Sunday night were also 11L personnel groupings, and neither Washington nor Switzer were on the field for any of those 6 there. So, and look, the Steelers ran quite a few. Pretty much the others were 4 or 5 wide receiver sets.
Okay. I mean, and I guess with some rotation, I mean, there's obviously rotation there. Maybe they're doing it because there's young guys and they need to have, they don't want to put it all on one guy's plate. I'd be curious to know, and we'll have to wait for Matthew's starting unless you happen to have the number, what the first half or maybe the first 3 quarters numbers were for Washington, because it felt like he didn't play consistently until late in that game. At the first half, and maybe he played 10 snaps. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'd be curious kind of how often he played when the game was relatively close.
No, I don't have the breakdown of that just yet, so we'll have to wait until we see what unless I can go through it quicker here in the next, by Friday here. We should have it by Friday anyway. We can talk a little bit more about it by then, but just kind of rolling through it. And I mean, he wasn't out there. Look, I mean, here's the thing. This is kind of a B in my, they got to get away from using Switzer so much like that, especially in 11 personnel.
Yep. They need a more dynamic threat.
I mean, if you want to use them, then you need to use them more. And I hate to use the comparison to Julian Edelman or whatnot, because it's not who he is. But I mean, it's like they're trying. Look, his average depth of target once again was around 2 yards. I mean, he is what he's been. Okay, and it's hard, and I've preached this all offseason. He is who he is at this point. So to me, man, I just do not understand why you're going to run him out there so much on 11 personnel.
Yeah, I'm with you.
To me, I am, I'm thrilled if I'm the Patriots every time they threw to him underneath. That's one play off of the clock's running, that kind of thing, because he's just not a guy that's going to get a lot of yards. What did he hit? What his longest reception was like 8 yards in that game, and people say, well, at least he caught all 6 of his balls. Oh yeah, you damn sure better have 100% completion percentage when the ball's traveling 2 yards in the air.
I wonder how many of his career receptions are beyond 10 yards.
Not many.
I'm curious what that percent is, and I wonder how that stacks up for the rest of the league. I'm sure it's low based on the numbers.
Well, look, you can go to Next Gen Stats, and you can look. I got it pulled up right now from 2018. Obviously, he didn't play much of any in 2017, right?
Yeah.
2018. When you look at what they call average targeted, I wish to start using a more universal, all these abbreviation acronyms or whatnot that you have for some of these stats. It'd be nice if they start making them more kind of universal, but they call it, instead of average depth of target, they call it average targeted air yards. 3.2, and we covered this during the off season already, but that number of his last year on 44 targets was 3.2 yards. Now, what is the minimum here on their list to qualify to be on this list? 43. You have to have 43 targets to qualify to be on this list of targeted players last year. 3.2 was his average depth of target. The next closest player was Evan Ingram at 5.1 yards.
Yeah. Big difference.
You're almost 2 yards difference there. What's funny is the next guy on the list is Vance McDonald at 5.7 yards there. But there's only 5 players with a average targeted air yards of under 6.
Okay, I have some numbers here for you. Ryan Switzer has 48 career receptions. He did have 6 in Dallas his rookie year.
A few of those were out of the backfield, weren't they?
I'm sure that they were. What percentage? I have the percentage. Let's not do percentage. How many catches did Switzer have of 10 plus yards of those 48? Do you think?
Were the average depth of target?
No, just overall, not average depth of target. Just what was the yardage gain on the play? Reception plus yak. How many of those went 10 plus yards of the 48 that he's caught in his career?
Let's see. 8?
12.
Okay.
So he's got 25% of 10 plus. Now, how many of those were 15 yards or more? Again, of those 48 or of those 12, you could say.
Yeah, I'm trying to go back through my head all that I watched with.
They were all with Pittsburgh, by the way. None with Dallas.
I know he's had at least 3 that I can think of.
Oh, ding, ding, ding! You got 3. Yep. It's 3 of his 48 career receptions have been of 15 plus yards. That is 6.3%. I'm betting that's the lowest in football.
The fact that I remembered that is I knew it was low.
You can count on one hand the number of receptions. And part of that is by design. It's not all his fault. He's been used basically as a running.
Right, you're right. It's not his fault, but that is who he is.
Yeah, that's how the team perceives of what he can do, and that's the bottom line. And he's not offering you much react, and he's not offering you anything as a vertical threat. So what exactly is he offering you? Again, I like him in the return game, but as a receiver, we've seen a ceiling.
Oh, yeah, we most definitely.
Anything else from Tomlin you want to talk about, or do you want to get back into this game a little bit and kind of what else we want?
Let me see if I can find my left-off point here. He asked about Juju and the double coverage. He says Juju expects to see that every week. That's just life for him. Boy, I thought they did a great job on him. Especially Gilmore. Boy, there were a few times where I think you could have called illegal contact. Gilmore was that physical with him, and they did a good job, with not that he needed all that much help, I didn't think, with Gilmore, but they sure were kind of physical with him, and I think we brought up the quote in the other show the other day about, the game plan was to be physical with him and get him on the ground as quickly as possible.
Did you feel like they doubled him a lot? Because honestly,
I didn't feel like
really.
it. No, it didn't feel like it. That's what I'm getting at. Gilmore did a great job that I mean, they just pretty much said, "Here, go after him, Gilmore," and that freed up. That's why there probably were a little bit fewer opportunities to go down the sides with the single coverage. And I think when Ben saw and identified that, he did try to do that. I mean, obviously they completed just the one to Washington down the side there. But it goes back to kind of what we were saying the other day. They needed to paper cut New England back. In my opinion, with a lot more underneath stuff, and use Vance McDonald a little bit more. Use those backs out of the backfield. They never had rhythm offensively, period. Anyway, and Mike Tomlin made sure to kind of talk about how important. Those short yardage, I mean, the 4 or 5 short yardage situations that I don't know if you can circle one exact kind of turning point in this game, Alex, because look, I think the outcome was going to maybe the scores a little bit closer there. But that, with 2 minutes left in the game, that drop by Dante Moncrief, they all did the kind of the spot route, zone, go to the chains and turn around, and Ben takes your pick there. The kind of the zone concepts there, and the Patriots were in zone, but the drop there by Moncrief with right at 2 minutes left on the 4th and 1. I mean, is that the turning point of the game?
It's up there. I mean, it's harder to find one turning point in a 33-3 loss, but I said, if Moncrief makes that catch and then he makes the one in the end zone to start the second half that ultimately led to the field goal instead of the touchdown, maybe we're talking about a different game, or at least talking about a game that had at some point the feeling of being competitive, which did not happen on Sunday night.
Because if you convert, here's that worst case scenario, maybe if you convert that 4th and 1, then the Patriots don't get that field goal at the end of the half. So there's 3 points potentially, worst case scenario maybe that you save there. Obviously, best case scenario, you convert that 4th, and remember, you're right at around midfield, right? At that point, you convert that 4th and 1. Who knows? Maybe you go down and you score. Get a touchdown there, and then obviously because of the way the rest of the half. I mean, that you go in. Let's say it was what was the score at the time?
17 nothing. Yeah, I mean that's a good way to look at it. Let's say you even just get a field goal on that drive with the Moncrief 4th and 1.
Getting the ball back in the second half.
Right, and then I know we're rewriting history, but let's just assume everything else plays out the same way. That Moncrief calls in that touchdown on the opening drive of the second half. Now it's 17-10 instead of being 20-3. And then ultimately 27-3 the next time the Patriots got the ball back. That is a world of difference, obviously.
And then, as Mike Thomas says, you make Tom Brady compete a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you're probably still headed for the same outcome, which is the L. But maybe you make things a little. I mean, who knows? I mean, yeah, you're right. You can't rewrite history in there, and I'm not trying to boil this down to one play.
Sure.
But that was kind of when going back through this thing and matching up with the play sheet and the time and everything that happened, I kind of get the feeling that was kind of the turning point of the game there.
Yeah, I think now that we've kind of reverse engineered this thing, as you'd like to say.
And he should have had that, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Talk about Mike Tomlin laying the egg. Moncrief needs to start catching the football as if it's an egg. You need to start using your hands more. Don't let that thing get into you. You look at that, and I got a great. I don't know if you saw it in that in the animated GIF that I have of the one in the end zone there. I stopped it right at the perfect frame there. And kudos to the Bill Belichick made it a point to praise, who was it? Chung on one of them, and one of them.
Yeah, Chung was on the 4th one, McCourty on the end zone,
and McCourty on the one in the end zone. Went out of his way to praise his guys of ripping the ball out. Okay, but that's an after the fact matter as far as I'm concerned. Your guys are supposed to catch that foot. Those combative catches, as we like to call them, those should be The Steelers, and you see James Washington's reaction after Moncrief drops that one in the end zone. I couldn't help but think to myself that if he would have got his lobster crackers on it, that he would have come down with that. But I mean, those make no, and it's not surprising to anybody. Dante Moncrief had a horrible game, and it'll be interesting to see. Look, you got to go back to him this week against Seattle, and it's important that he has a strong bounce back game here.
Yeah, no, he needs it. This offense needs it. The whole team needs it. No debating about that. What else did you have you learned from this team going back to the All-22? Anything that stuck out to you? Just not even just what Tomlin said, but just rewatching this game now, that because the coaches' film wasn't out when we talked on Monday.
They're going to have to learn how to start covering some of these man rub-offs.
Yeah. Any way to do that? Anything in particular that sticks out of how to, because it's easier said than done, unfortunately.
Right. You're going to have to start maybe trying to switch some of this stuff off better. Maybe, I don't know, because they're just teams. Look, teams have that tape now, and you can bet they're drooling. You bet Seattle's going to do some of the same things. They're going to make you prove that you have fixed what was broken. That's the way I would attack the Steelers right now, especially if you've got a shifty wide receiver. Run some bunch and stuff like that. You'll run the pre-snap motion, get your identifiers out there, whether it's man or zone, and just work off of that from there. Against lower quality quarterbacks, a little less of an issue, right? And maybe not as good coach offensive teams. But I mean, Russell Wilson, he's been around the league a little bit, or in the league for a little bit. So they got to do a better job. And forever and a day, people were screaming, "This team's got to play more man. This team's got to play more man." Well, now you see the drawbacks of what happens when you do play more man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about mixing up coverages. My takeaway was, and this is a continued problem really since Butler's been defensive coordinator, dealing with empty. And I know it's hard to do, and I'm sure no defense has good numbers when they have to defend empty sets, even if that's just 11 personnel, back spread out, whatever the case is. But Tom Brady and empty on Sunday night, 11 of 13, 126 yards and a touchdown, 132.7 quarterback rating. Steelers have no answers when it comes to defending empty. And until they do that, teams are just going to keep on doing it.
And when teams are also seemingly opposing offenses are playing downhill. Now there's studies out there that running games, and I believe them. Good running games don't necessarily help when it comes to play action. Mm-hmm. However, play action is still very effective. Period. I don't care if you've rushed for -6 yards on 8 carries. Play action can still be effective if used right. And
you know how often the Steelers use play action Sunday?
Once. And
yeah.
we talk about that. We've talked about that for, I think, 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
About Ben, you look at Ben statistically over the years, Ben's passing numbers when he's used play action in the past are fantastic.
Yep.
Absolutely fantastic. And why on a Wednesday when you get him in there, and it's too bad he don't have his radio show anymore, but I would pepper him with this kind of stuff. Why is there something that maybe he doesn't like? Because look, Ben has some say-so in these game plans with Randy right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, why aren't you using, now obviously in the gun, it's maybe a little bit less effective. However, don't tell Brady that,
mm-hmm.
But why aren't we seeing Ben under center a few more snaps a game? And why aren't we seeing the use of more play action during the games? And don't hand me the stuff that, we're not running the football well, because I don't buy into that.
Right. No, I agree. You don't have to be this super effective run team for play action to work. Everyone has to read their keys, and if a linebacker gets a low hat read that signals run, then you're going to play like it's the run. And so part of that obviously is game circumstance. Obviously you're not doing play action in the fourth quarter of that game, but you could do it early, and it's not just a this game problem. It happened all throughout last year, where I think the Steelers ran a few play action than anybody, or almost as anybody in football last year. So this is a long-standing problem, not a new thing to talk about.
No, like I said, I mean, it seems like we've talked about this for a couple years now when it comes to that, you know?
Yeah. But again, to go back to empty edges, not to bounce back to that, I'm gonna have an article probably for tomorrow morning on that, on just, again, the issues of how does Butler respond to empty, what are the matchups he tries to create, what are his answers, and the bottom line, and this is not new, as sad as it is to say, you're getting linebackers on receivers, you're getting cornerbacks on running backs, and you're getting a lot of problems. Check out around the Josh Gordon, the 44-yard play, right around there. Those couple plays before and after. I mean, you got two linebackers on two receivers on those plays. Vince Williams on Edelman and Bud Dupree on Josh Gordon. And, need I say more?
You want to take a guess how many times Ben used play action last season?
Can I give you a percentage, or do you want a number?
Oh, you'll make me figure out percentage.
Well, you're going to make me figure out a number. I don't know.
How many total dropbacks? He had 713 total dropbacks.
Okay, so you're saying how many of those were play action?
I guess I'm going to take my shoes off here.
I'm with you. I'm going to say 8%, 57 times he did play action. Random guess.
82 times.
82. So what is that as a... Okay, so that's maybe 12% or something.
And regardless, it was near the bottom of the league.
Yeah.
When it comes, well, I'll put it to you this way: Josh Allen from the Bills even had more play action.
And I think the only team that did run play action Sunday were the Bills.
What's that?
The only team that did not use play action Sunday were the Bills and Josh Allen, who had 44 dropbacks.
Jared Goff led the league, not surprisingly. Tom Brady second. Patrick Mahomes, third in the league there.
With some pretty good offenses, Dave.
Those are some pretty good offenses there, Alex.
Yeah, might want to learn. Take a cue from those teams. They don't need fullbacks either. I mean, the Rams don't use a fullback. They played nothing but 11 personnel last year.
So, that obviously did stick out with not only how good Tom Brady used play action, but once again, how the Steelers did not. So that was something that stuck out. I'm trying to think what else maybe. Man, there was that all 22 is so ugly. Mm-hmm. Man, them trying to run some of those crack tosses and all. Yeah. I mean, you just beating your head. And I think you could tell that the Patriots worked on some of that stuff, and boy, that John Simon, we talked about a year ago, right before the season started. Maybe John Simon was a guy maybe the Steelers could look at, bringing in. Obviously, the Steelers didn't sign him. The Patriots did.
Well, you want to talk about players the Steelers almost signed? Dante Hightower. He was the best player on the field for the Patriots Sunday. He was awesome.
Yeah, but I wasn't so shook up about not signing him a couple years ago.
I'm just saying. I mean, just in that
for the
same
price, he's missed a lot of games due to injury now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say that he was all over the place Sunday.
Well, Collins too. I mean, on that crack toss. On that crack toss, John Simon he blows that thing up on Vance McDonald. That he even though he got credit for being in half, I think they both got assisted tackles on that play. But that big reason why that lane's there, and Collins is still quick enough to read and get he beat Marquise Pouncey to the spot there, right? I mean that's an open lane. And he just shot right through it for the -4 or whatnot on that. But look, you had went positive run, the two plays before that.
But then you ran it the third time.
And then you try to go to the one too many times there, and you get what you get. And yeah, I mean, it's not surprising that Mike Tomlin after the fact would say, "Boy, those 4 or 5 short yardage." And it still bugs me about the whole positivity. Let's get 3 points on the 4th and goal, man. You're not going to beat them by kicking. You think they got too concerned about giving up a field goal there?
Nope. You're not completing a 20-point comeback with field goals against the Patriots or anybody for that matter.
I was putting out Tom Brady's play action stats on Twitter the day after the game. And I guess if you want to talk about maybe one tiny little positive from the game, he said, man, I defy you to find any stat from the Patriots the other night that wasn't great. Well, I found one. They were 0-3 in the red zone.
Yeah, run defense was decent. statistically.
What else stuck out to you on the line? Watt had a decent game, but still, I mean, you let Brady get the ball out that quick. I mean,
yeah, they just took Watt away. I mean, they just were doubling, chipping. I mean, they weren't letting Watt do a whole lot. For me, Edmonds was pretty bad with his eyes. He was responsible on the Philip Dorsett 58-yard touchdown. I know there's been a debate about exactly what the coverage was, but we all agree that it was Terrell Edmonds at fault. Some miscommunication there. Alejandro Villanueva, I thought maybe played his worst game I've seen since his first year in Pittsburgh. That was really bad, and he's always kind of a slow starter, but I've never seen him play that poorly, and it just felt like he had no power. I don't know if he still got that shoulder issue still bugging him or what, but not a good game from Villanueva.
Who was that sat him down on that one play?
Hightower, yeah. It was Hightower, and then made the tackle. And then Villanueva got called for holding. I mean, if you're going to hold him, at least don't let him make the tackle.
What did you think about that one hold? That was that the one? Villanueva had one or two. I'm trying to remember.
He had two. The second was decline. I don't remember what that one.
The second one was the other drop by Moncrief. Was the final drop by. It was a no play. That's why technically it might not go down in the books as a drop from Moncrief because the play. Well, I guess it does because the penalty was declined there, but it was kind of the chicken or the egg situation there. The kind of one where I mean, he kind of has him wrapped, but he has his arm. He's doing the airplane as he's falling to the ground there. Did you still think that qualified as a hold?
It's not coming to mind right now. I'll let you know. But, I mean, obviously it didn't matter at that point. But, yeah, I mean, Keith Butler, I mean, he tried to do some different things. He tried to disguise some coverages and add some new wrinkles from last time, which I can appreciate. But even when he tried to do that, the defense couldn't execute. My view of that Dorsett 58-yard touchdown, that it was an inverted cover, too. That was miscommunication because there was motion and it wasn't checked to properly, and that's what led to the busted play. So even when Butler tried to do some creative things, which you have to do to beat Brady, the defense couldn't even execute that. So it was just a mess across the board.
Let's see. Trying to think if there's anything. You think people are kicked their chairs out from underneath them listening to this thing yet?
I'm about to. So, and the Patriots did a great job of being able to manipulate safeties with tight end motion, just being able to spin those safeties and create openings on slants and stuff like that. So they were just, and this is obvious, they were just in control in every facet from start to finish.
Yes, they were. Still, my assessment is that is going to be one of, if not the best defenses that they faced all year. And look, the Patriots' offense was a lot more in sync than what I expected them to be. I expected them to be, decent offensively, but they look mid-season form,
Mm-hmm.
and the Steelers on the back end, on the flip side, looked early
preseason form.
Looked early season form, if you will. It's ugly on all 22.
Now, a little bit of good news. I know Daniel Valente wrote an article saying that historically under Tomlin, Steelers have bounced back and won in big ways when they've suffered these terrible losses. So, there's a precedent for that. And then I wrote about yesterday about previous seasons where you had a terrible week one and then you bounce back. And I think the best place to look for this moment is 2011, where you open up with a 35-7 loss to Baltimore. Baltimore just absolutely beat down the Steelers. And then you hosted Seattle the next week at home, and you beat them 24-0. And obviously Seattle's coming into town this week. I'm not saying it's going to be a 24-0 game, but you could look at 2002, I think 1997. People talk about 1989, that 51-0 blowout loss to Cleveland. Then you got shellacked the next weekend against Cincinnati and bounced back, made the playoffs. So while it was an ugly week one, there is a lot of history that says this team's bounced back from ugly week ones before and been able to right the ship.
Was that what I like to refer to as maybe the game that who was the third game that season?
In 89? What year?
No, in 2011. Let's see. The second game was the Ravens. That was the Jonathan Scott.
The first game was the Ravens.
Okay. I like to refer. The first game was the Ravens. I like to refer to that as the Max Starks game. Wasn't that the game that Willie Colon tore something against the Ravens and then was lost for the season? Didn't that precipitate the bringing back of Max Starks?
Right. Yeah.
The following week, and wasn't there concern about Max Starks
his weight
and all like that on that game? I'm trying to remember. I'm pulling up the because
I don't know. I don't remember what year it was, but I remember that being the case. That sounds right.
No, they had lost Cologne. Marcus Gilbert started the following week against the Seahawks. Scott was bad, I think, in that, wasn't great in that game. And then the next week was probably the Titans game, or no, who was it? It was the Colts. I'm trying to remember if that was the game. When was Starks brought back? I guess I have my years mixed up here. I do remember the Cologne injury happening in that game against Baltimore there. And I do remember the shutout against the Seahawks. Yeah, last two times the Seahawks have come to Pittsburgh, no points. 45-0 combined score. Boy, wouldn't it be nice to have one of those against Russell Wilson on the heels of getting blown out by the Patriots.
It looks like you're right. I'm just looking at Wikipedia. I'm trusting the internet here. But Starks was released July 28th, 2011, was re-signed October 5th, 2011. So I think Starks came back just later than what you're saying.
Okay, it was week 5 that they brought him back. For some reason, I was thinking it was earlier in the season. Okay. All right, give me half credit on that.
Yeah, I'll give you a gold star for that one.
I'm trying to remember what precipitated. Was it? I'm trying to remember. Did Scott get injured, or was it just wasn't there one of the butt blocks in one of those games in there?
That sounds about right with Jonathan Scott.
But
the old butt block.
All right. I mean, history is history, though. Doesn't necessarily mean anything when it comes to this game.
I'm trying to give a little optimism here.
I know. What has you optimistic about this defense?
All the things that I thought about before the season, that it's still a young group in a lot of ways, that it will get more experience, that it is a faster defense, a more versatile defense, a defense I think that is capable of producing more turnovers. I know those things probably are tuned out right now coming off of week 1, but I don't want to forget about the optimism that I had. I thought this was the best defense potentially since 2010. Heading into this year. And I still believe that to be true. I don't want to let one game against the best offense you're going to face all year and the best schematic offense you're going to face all year totally change that picture. So I don't want to lose sight of what we thought preseason and have it all do a 180 just because of one game.
Yeah, I think they'll be better moving forward. If you get Davis back there in the back end there, it's only a matter of time before Bush takes over the green dot, I think. Might not be this week. I mean, he's going to start playing more and more, obviously, from here on out. Hey, here's a positive. He leads all defensive rookies in total tackles after the first week.
Hey, we have 11.
11. So he's on pace for 170. That'd be a record, wouldn't it? 170 something tackles. Obviously, you don't want to have to. And look, I mean, you have a good. He had a nice. I don't know if he was credited for a PBU.
He was. He should have been.
He should have been. But those aren't kind of things that Elias is probably going to go in there and change. After the fact. It probably should, but there was some good stuff in there. He's going to get more comfortable in this thing moving forward. I mean, obviously, you can still see the speed in there. Are we going to see Joe Hayden on a week-to-week basis, travel? We know he's going to probably do it against Cleveland, but that's middle of the season.
Yeah. I mean, he traveled against Gordon, so I think the Nelson gives you a little more comfort that you can play either matchup. We'll see. You got Tyler Lockett this week.
Do you worry? That's where I was going. Do you worry this week about a guy like Lockett and a guy like DK, or as Mike Tomlin calls him, DJ Metcalf?
What was that about? I don't know if they're going to travel or not. I mean, Lockett's going to line up in a lot of places. Hayden can play in the slot, but. Maybe you'd have Nelson travel almost, because Nelson, I think, is more comfortable in the slot where you're going to see Lockett a good bit, and then maybe get Hayden on Metcalf. I don't know how it's going to
go. Hilton didn't have the best of game.
No, I mean, no one had a good game. No, I didn't think Hilton wasn't particularly good or terrible. I mean, there was a touchdown allowed. What do you think happened on that first touchdown to Dorsett down the seam? Is that on Hilton? Is that on Edmonds? I couldn't get a good read on that.
I'll tell you what, Tom Brady did a hell of a job of looking Edmonds off.
I don't know why Edmonds moved to his left, though. There was nothing to his side. There was no responsibility. There was no route. Like, that was Edmonds being obviously manipulated, but, like, again, his eyes were really bad. He's getting suckered in on everything. It was pretty abysmal.
You have to have there has to be a level of just given awareness of film study, of say a feel. Did you hear who was it talking about Amos, and who was the Bears? The Packers he's with the Packers now, who had that interception late the other night.
Yeah, Adrian Amos.
Yeah, and who was the corner on that side? Anyway, Amos is one of these guys that's really got a good head on his shoulders. And did you hear the? You go back and listen to the post game talk about the corner and the safety there, about how they kind of knew that, on that interception, what was coming there and how they communicated there. Those are the kind of things you need those safeties that kind of have that, like Troy had, and that sixth sense, if you will. And I know and not everybody's going to have it at all, but boy, you got to have an idea that if kind of one of the if then kind of statements, if you see this on this side, you're probably not going to have to pay as close attention to it, on certain route combos and certain coverages and all like that. So, I mean, he's still young, but it hasn't been great so far.
No, I'm still excited for Edmonds. I still think he can have a good season. But yeah, I think him not having Davis is kind of that safety net of being the veteran guy, where Davis is calling out everything and Edmonds can kind of receive the information. Edmonds is the guy that has to be a big communicator, paired with Cam Kelly making his NFL debut. Probably was a very uncomfortable situation, and obviously it was, because it reflected in Edmonds' level of play.
Yeah, and you're trying to be conscious of not trying to give Brady too many of the same looks, even though they're going to get him anyway, and some sort of, especially if they can get some of the plays set up at certain field position and certain personnel groupings and how they use them and all like that. Keith Butler, going back to some of the things he said during the offseason about, don't want to let Brady identify the post safety and those kind of things. Yeah, that didn't work out so well. But I mean, in the communication and all, and the bus obviously don't help either.
No, that's all basically I have for this game. I know we've been pretty doom and gloom. Anything else you want to add before we get to some reader emails?
No, I think we've got enough of it. And I've just started to scratch the surface on some of this Seattle. On some of the Seattle tapes, so we'll talk more about that, preview that game fully on Friday when we have our beat writer on as well too. All right, let's cover the first email that you got on the Tyler.
Yeah, this was from our buddy Wesley. He sent me this question a couple weeks ago, but I said I wanted to table it. But obviously with a Knicks injury, I think it's a good time to talk about it. I don't have the actual form of the question. He just sent me the reminder here. Wes says, this would be a good time to implement my idea to start practicing with Medikevich in at fullback to be used on running plays as the lead blocker until Knicks is healthy. So any chance of Medikevich getting work at fullback?
Doesn't matter. I mean, you're not going to use them much. I mean, I suppose there's a chance. I mean, here's the thing. Tomlin didn't say yay or nay. So, he didn't discount it. So, look, you got to find guys that can do multiple things. And we saw during the during training, or at least they were attempting to go. Who knows if he would have stayed healthy, if he would have got some snaps at fullback with a guy like Sutton Smith and all. Never saw that outside of some OTA practices, really, I guess, and maybe a training camp rep here or there or whatnot. But I mean, you got to try to do something maybe to get a lead blocker in there on a few plays.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Medikevich, although he did play some running back at St. Joseph, but they'll get a tight end to do that.
Yeah, and who? I mean, you're trying to limit some of the wear and tear, I guess, you have on McDonald. I mean, here's one thing that stuck out, Alex. You didn't have a lot of two tight end personnel groupings on the field the other night.
Yeah, Grimble played 2 snaps, so use him at fullback. You're not using him at tight end, apparently.
Right, and you didn't use an extra tackle in that game either. I would have bet that you would have had at least 2 or 3 of those snaps in there.
Yeah, again, game circumstance certainly dictated that at the end, but you didn't see it in the beginning. So yeah, I mean, I would have Grimble play a little fullback. That's fine. Gentry's too tall. I wouldn't have Gentry do it.
All right, so we'll see how they use that moving forward. You got any other questions on your end?
Nope, that's all for me.
All right, Sam Shriver writes in, you guys have pointed out multiple examples of the Steelers turning things around after a bad Week 1 loss. Let's also not forget Week 3 loss against the Eagles back in 2016. Yes, that was a game where I think Roethlisberger was sacked like 6 or 8 times or something, wasn't it, Alex?
Is that 2016? I thought that was earlier. That was earlier.
I'm trying to remember, or was that the game? Oh, no, that was the game that DeCastro got blown up by
Fletcher Cox.
Fletcher Cox in that one. I'm thinking of
that 9 sacks they gave up against Jim Johnson.
Jim Johnson, yeah. How many years ago was that?
I want to say that was 2008. Don't quote me on that, but it was more about a decade ago.
All right, he goes on to say Eagles back in 2016 lost 34-3, but turned things around the very next week by beating the Chiefs 43-14. And they made the AFC Championship game that season. Here's hoping to a very convincing win over the Seahawks and another deep playoff run. Yeah, and Daniel wrote about that. Alex just kind of recapped that as well too. And here's what we've said really since the schedule was released. These first 4 games. We're going to get a good idea what this defense is, Alex. If you turn around and lay another egg, that just came to mind. That Tomlin said that they did lay an egg, but I mean that was a natural thought process there anyway. But I mean, if you do lay another egg, against Seattle, panic's going to set in big time. However, if you turn around and you have one of those, 23-0 games. We could only hope, or 23-7 type games. Then there's going to be a little bit of optimism that should come back, and then the narrative switch back to, well, that Patriots team is damn good.
Yeah. That's the goal. It's just to be able to bounce back, and history says they can. Now, will they? No, it doesn't guarantee it, but I just want to put that in perspective and context that we've been down this road before, had some terrible losses, and then you bounce back, and a month from now you're kind of forgetting about what happened this game.
And we'll see when it comes to that. All right, let's see what else do we have here in the email box. Seahawks Steelers from Matt writes, I just want to say first that unlike some of the emailers from the last episode, I'll still be watching and listening to this very informative podcast. My question is, the Bengals went into Seattle and played them surprisingly close. Is there a particular weakness of the Seahawks that the Steelers should be able to exploit? I tell you, my initial run through the tape is you can get them down the field.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't watched any tape yet. I'm going to do that later today, but that secondary is young. They're not the Legion of Boom. And then you worry about that interior defensive line. No Jerron Reed with a suspension. And then I think Poona Ford might miss. Is probable to miss with an injury. I know they brought in Clowney, but maybe you can run on this team better than you could run on the Patriots.
Yeah, so I haven't gotten, Matt. Neither one of us has gotten. I just did a cursory look at it and all like that. I haven't gone through a lot. I'll start doing that later on this afternoon here when it comes to that. Michael Hewlett writes in, will Sean Davis make a difference? What's the percent of Bush's snaps? Will Connor get 20 carries? I'm assuming that he's asking about the game against Seattle here. Will Sean make a difference? I caution myself to say, can it get any worse? But I know it possibly can. You would expect it to make a difference in there, Michael. I would think with Sean Davis back in there, the percent of Bush's snaps. What did we say his percent was the other day? 70 something.
Yeah, 70 something. I wonder if he'll be in an every down role. I don't know if they're going to do that. It might be the same for one more week.
It's coming.
Yeah.
You can like the train outside of Alex's front door. Yeah. It is coming with him being on the field 98% of the time there. Looking back real quick to see what.
Let's hope it's as loud as the train outside my door. And then Davis help? Yeah, Davis is going to help. I mean, he's going to offer some stability and continuity back there. I think take the pressure off of Edmund, so he's going to help. Will it make enough of a difference? Who knows, but it'll be an improvement.
76% of the snaps we talked about Bush having in that opener there. Connor into 20 carries. Yeah, I think it's possible.
That's all game circumstance. They get a lead. Yes, if not, probably not.
Big Dog, Sunday Thoughts. Hey, guys, this is Jason from Buffalo. Been listening faithfully to the podcast for over a year. The game Sunday is mostly on coaching. It seems every year that the first game or two, everyone is sleeping. The preseason and camp need more of the starters practicing. Moncrief, I would put as inactive at least this week, if not two. These players need to know that they need to be ready to play, and they definitely were not. I'm confident that we will get better, but this needs to be ironed out in preseason. I don't think you sit Moncrief down. I mean, he obviously needs to have a bounce-back game. I would go to him first snap. right off the shoot, give him a quick confidence builder, if you will, there. But look, I mean, he's got to play better, obviously, Jason. But I don't think he's going to sit down, nor do I think he deserves to be sat down. The game coaching. Look, I mean, yeah, they weren't ready. The plan and the execution was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree about Moncrief not being sat, and they probably shouldn't be sat. I don't know if I agree with giving him the ball in the first play. That one makes me a little queasy.
Don't live in your fears, Alex.
Oh, I'm living in my. If Tomlin can kick field goals, I can live in my fears.
You're always living in your fears. First snap, go right at him.
All right.
Dennis Diaz writes in, Tuzar Skipper, the loss was just bad management. Talking about Skipper, bad management by the Steelers. There wasn't any safe player to temporarily be cut and re-sign that would not have been vulnerable to be claimed, i.e. Dangerfield. They had the Dobbs trade underway. They could not find a way of protecting Skipper for a week for the Dobbs move to open a spot on the 53 for Skipper. This was poor judgment and a real blunder by the Steelers. Dennis, you're assuming, look, if the injury at Jaguars quarterback doesn't happen, there's a chance Dobbs still on this roster. So you can't assume things that the trade was underway.
Oh, yeah, there's no way that trade happens without Foles getting hurt. So the idea of releasing Skipper has nothing to do with Dobbs. That Dobbs was never in place by the time Skipper was released on Saturday at 4. So that's just incorrect.
And the whole Dangerfield thing, that's one of your top flight special teams guys, you know?
Mm-hmm. You were only going to cut somebody that was going to be inactive for Sunday's game against the Patriots. So look at that list of inactives and tell me who you're going to cut from that. Yeah, that's the way you feel.
And with Banner up, it wasn't going to be him.
Yeah.
You weren't going to cut Chiquama. I mean, Gentry. I mean,
you're not cutting Dangerfield. You had 3 safeties healthy in that game. Like Dangerfield's not getting cut.
Dennis, it's just look. You got 54 guys you want to keep, and you only can keep 53.
Yeah, so if you don't want to cut Skipper, you're either cutting probably UG3 or Fred Johnson. Either of those guys could have been claimed too. I think would have been claimed. Potentially. And you'd be having the same conversation.
Right. Then we'd be back here talking about Steelers and bad management.
Yeah. I mean, again, it sucks. I'm not trying to pretend that it doesn't suck. And I like Skipper, and I wish he was still here. But it happens. It happened with Josh Morrow. Happened with Wesley Johnson. Life goes on.
Lewis Grove writes in, I ask you a serious question, Dave, because you have begged for edge rushers for years, was dropping a potential legitimate edge rusher in exchange for a potentially above-average receiver a good move, especially when we need to let 48 and 56 go at season's end, meaning Bud Dupree and Chicolo. This is not to mention keeping 10. He should be called a catcher, not a wide receiver or return man. I'm disappointed in our personnel choices as I am our play on Sunday. Thoughts? Goes back to what we just said. Somebody had to be moved to make. He's questioning overall the decision to bring up Holton.
No, again, I get that, but I think they wanted that plan in place for someone to play in special teams, and also I would not call Holton an above-average receiver. He is not close to above average.
I don't think did he say that? He said
is that what he said?
A potentially above-average receiver, a good move. Here's the thing, Lewis, and I knew better. I was in a hurry to try to get some stuff done on Saturday. Generally, I wait until the 1 o'clock. My time, which is 4 o'clock Eastern time, to turn in my inactive. I do that post every the night before every game of predicting who the inactives are. I knew better than to release that thing early because I had an inkling, just maybe, that Holton might. So I'll put it to you this way, Lewis. I was not shocked that Holton was brought up there. And I think the bigger shock for me when it came to the inactive list is that Chiquamo Okorafor was inactive and that Deontay Johnson was not on that list. Look, they thought he'd make it back. It didn't. Let's see how this thing plays out, as me and Alex talked at the top of the show here.
However, I think I have to blame you, Dave, for Tuzar Skipper being claimed. because I'm pretty sure you had the draft partially written of Tuzar Skipper being going through waivers, and just in case he went through unclaimed.
Another time saver.
Yeah, and I was hopeful that when I first saw that, I thought that it was true. Like, okay, he went through waivers unclaimed, cool.
Well,
but
the thing is we were 40 minutes out
right
at the time, and
hadn't heard.
usually you hear on Twitter by then, and then Phil Yates comes across with the news on that. Normally, you hear about those claims a little bit earlier in the day. So I said, okay, well, just to be sure, I'll go ahead and type this up. Needless to say, it didn't take much of an edit.
Yeah, just was and wasn't, claimed. But I think you put the jinx on him.
I'm pretty sure I had nothing to do with that. Kane 22's mad about Skipper too. Did you see that poor guy on Twitter that ordered a Skipper jersey?
I saw. Hey, that's the risk you take. And can I just say, this team lost 33-3. Why are we so mad about Tuzar Skipper? I'm just, no offense. It's got some bigger fish to fry.
And here's what I continue to go. I understand down the road type stuff, and boy, this guy, what people are already looking at 2020 before even training camp was over with. I get the part of the mind that wants to go there, but you got to field the team that gives you the best chance to win on a weekly basis and a yearly basis as well. And that's what the Steelers, look, it sucks. There's no way around describing what happened. It sucks, but hopefully we're looking back at this thing and it's not the end of the world here. Kane 22 is mad about Skipper. Well, crap. I like the kid for the backstory alone. He did have a very good backstory. I don't understand letting guys go that seem to show so much upside. Maybe he never turns into an NFL starter, but do you really think he's going to be better than Chick? I thought they might have finally hit on an undrafted free agent. I don't follow other teams, but isn't there someone else out there that shows some upside that we could get? Elliott's been in the league since. One thing we didn't mention is the back end of that move with J-Ron Elliott. I don't think you hit on that.
No, I didn't. I apologize.
In there, this is a guy that he's fun to watch on tape. Talking about J-Ron. With some of that, obviously not you don't get as excited about him as maybe as you do Skipper. But anyway, Elliott's been in the league since 2014 and still floating around on the practice squad. I'm afraid he's not going to be much help. You know what Elliott becomes? He becomes that guy that you can shuttle back and forth maybe if you need be because of injuries. I was glad to see them get a fit for Dobbs and get Duck back. Look, don't judge this thing until. I mean, it's easy to want to pass judgment on this thing. Yeah, once again, it sucks that they lost him. But remember how mad people, Alex, were at Howard Jones?
Yeah, they shouldn't have been mad. I'm more upset about losing Skipper than I am Howard Jones.
Tim writes in, Steelers pass. I thought a huge swing, or perhaps the beginning of the end, was when the Steelers had the 4th and 1 and punted. Felt scared and think Patriots ended up scoring a TD anyway. Can you review that stretch for me? It's a little fuzzy and nobody does it better from you guys. What was the 3rd down play? What yard line and how much time left? What yard line did the Pats in fact score between not going there and then the Moncrief dropping the actual one they went for? I thought that was all she wrote. P.S. Code Red was an obvious quote there. Look, I've gotten myself to a point now with analytics where you don't have to twist my arm much to go for any 4th and 1, Alex. Obviously, there's right and wrong situations in that. Do you remember the 4th and 1 that he is getting to here?
The punt?
Yes.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. 4th and 1 from the Steelers 30 with 10-10 in the second quarter, down 10-0. Steelers decided to punt. I was okay with a punt there.
Let's see here.
Did the Patriots score in that ensuing drive?
Give me a time on that so I can go back in my head real quick.
10-10 in the second quarter. I'm pulling this up on Game Pass.
Yeah,
the Patriots punted on that drive. They did not score a touchdown on that drive.
They went 3 and out on the other side there. So. Yep. And that precipitated at the time as things would play out. I think that ended up at the time being the Steelers' best starting field position at that point in the game. That was the Switzer run up and don't let the punt bounce, I believe. Didn't they start at the 30?
Yes, sir. You are correct with that photographic memory you have.
And unfortunately, though, they went once again. That was the run. The two positive running plays, and then the failed crack toss on the third.
Mm-hmm.
So fourth and geez. No, I mean the right decision was to punt there.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, let's move forward here. Who was that, Tim? Getting on down into some of these here. Boy, I think we're close to wiping these out. Okay, Jonathan Mason writes in wide receivers. Alex and Dave, I emailed y'all last week and I said I was worried about the wide receiver room, and obviously still am. I understand the Patriots secondary is probably the best they will play all season, but I just worry Ben likes Moncrief and Switzer too much. I think they can be good in limited reps, but shouldn't be on the field at 90% and 67% of the snaps. Also, watching Switzer's returner chaps me even more than that we didn't keep Deontay Spencer. When do you guys think Johnson and Washington will get more snaps? Consider it seems Ben has a lot to do with it, ? Thanks. Look, you know where I am on Switzer on offense. So, and where Washington should be on offense, I think you're going to see a lot more, or not a lot more. You're going to see some two tight end groupings this week. You're going to see some. You're going to see about your normal selection of 11 personnel. My hope is that 11 personnel includes more Washington than it does Switzer. Look, like it or not, you're going to find ways to start continuing to get Deontay Johnson on the field, but still not going to be a lot of snaps overall.
Yeah, it depends how you define a lot of snaps. I mean, I think, Moncrief, if he strolls for another week, then you start really pushing Johnson hard, and I want to see them give Washington probably more of an opportunity, especially early in games, but it's hard to say. We'll play it by ear.
I mean, if anything, getting back down into kind of the root of things is, I'd like to see Washington on the field more in 11 personnel.
Yeah.
And I would technically, even though they didn't have a lot of success in certain situations with it, outside of maybe inside red zone, I would like to see some two tight end groupings out there.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more moving forward here with that, and I think you will see that. I think I got time for one more here, maybe. Quick question for you guys. This is from Nathan Kim, and I didn't know how else to get a hold of you. Let's see. I've been following your podcast. Something a diehard Steelers fan in my life. I've always been highly passionate about sports, but just wanted to get in touch with you guys, see if possible. Any job openings or anything like that. Student physician here. We got Dr. Mel's great at handling that stuff. Nathan, let me read the rest of your email off the air here, and I'll see about any other aspects as far as that goes. Let's see. What's the talk? Oh, what do you think about the whole AB stuff lately? I hate to spend too much time on that. It's one thing after the other with AB.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a civil thing. It's not a criminal thing right now. I don't know how that's going to change it in the eyes of the NFL. The league says they are investigating. Patriots put out their aware of it statement, but I'm going to let that system play out because I have no idea what's truth and what's fiction.
Yeah, there's talk. They might put them on one of the list here. I don't know. I'm glad we're not having to write every 3 posts about it.
Mm-hmm.
Every third post about it. Mark Walters, David Alex, love the show. Been listening from York, Pennsylvania since 2013, 2014. With all the talk about ABs and Bell's absent being so detrimental to the offense, can you offer some glimmer of hope that this offense will get it together?
Well, I'll just say really quickly. I mean, obviously they're not going to be as poor as they were Sunday, and this is still a young group with a lot of moving pieces and adjusting to life without someone like AB. So, Johnson's going to get better, Washington will get better, Moncrief won't play that poorly again, Vance is going to go targetless until the very end of the game, Connor's going to get more opportunities. So, hopefully this is just the low point of the season. You always have that one low point, in offensive defense in the season, and then hopefully it just came earlier this year than past years.
Should they have played more during the preseason?
again, like you said before, Dave, it's easy to go back, and if you struggle, then you say, oh, they should have played more. Or if you get an injury in the preseason, you say you're playing them too much. I think it's all hindsight stuff. They played about the same as they have in the past, so it wasn't anything different that would lend to different results this time around.
Yeah, look, I mean, you had the whole risk-reward thing there. Look, let's see how they do in this second game.
Yep.
All right, anything else, Alex?
Let me look at my notes here. Nope, I think that's everything. We'll be back Friday, talk with a Seattle Seahawks beat writer and go over the Seattle game, give our predictions.
All right. In the meantime, hopefully you made it through and you didn't kick the chair out on this one. I know there's a lot of gloom and doom, but let's see how this team gets through this first quarter of the season. Obviously, a loss to the Seahawks and in the same sort of fashion would be brutal there. We'll help get you ready for that game on Friday, as Alex said. You can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button, upper right navigational bar. If you want an ad-free version, you hear all these people talking about how they like the ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. It's real and it's spectacular. And for $25 for a calendar year, you can have access to the ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. Go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate or hit the ad-free button on the upper right navigational bar. And until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.